Thank you. The time's 8:10. It is happening. Nothing now can stop it. We are to build a new railway, from London to Birmingham and then on to Crewe in Manchester and to Leeds as well. First announced by the then Transport Secretary Andrew Adonis a decade ago.
This strategy is for the development of an initial core high-speed network which would link London to Birmingham, Manchester, the East Midlands, Sheffield and Leeds, with high-speed trains running from the outset through to Liverpool, Newcastle, Glasgow and Edinburgh.
Well, that was the first green light. There were others along the way. The new Conservative Prime Minister, when he came into office.
I do believe if we really are serious about trying to rebalance our economy, make sure we get growth across the country and not just in the southeast, then actually the time for high-speed rail has come, and that's why it has my strong support.
That was David Cameron, of course. Well, the case for HS2 does not rest simply on the building of the line, the speed of the trains, the connection of the big cities, London, Birmingham, Manchester, Leeds. The point that backers of the line make is that the benefits of HS2 are going to be felt by millions of people across the UK, including people who never set foot on a high-speed train. So there'll be better regional, there'll be better local railway services, more space on other lines, more flexibility. This then is a big day, they claim, for a wide swathe of Britain, and a day when plenty of people will say those wider benefits are not proven as well. Maybe an illusion. Those sceptics, including, of course, the Prime Minister's own chief advisor, Dominic Cummings, and plenty of Conservative MPs. Among them, Michael Fabricant, the Conservative MP for Lichfield and Staffordshire, who is part of the HS2 review group of MPs who wrote to the Prime Minister as recently as December saying it was not too late for the government to change course. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Do you lose with good grace?
Oh, I always do everything with good grace, but it is disappointing. I saw Douglas Oakervey, who reviewed the whole question of HS2 back in July, and I pointed out to him that there were whole questions to do with the connectivity of HS2. It doesn't go into the main rail interchange at Birmingham New Street. So you can't just change platform when you come into Birmingham to take HS2. You have to walk with all your luggage to a brand new station at Curzon Street, which only has HS2. It doesn't connect with St Pancras. So you can't, for example, get on a train in Manchester and go city centre to Paris and deter people from flying. People are still going to fly because of the change of trains in London. So my argument is that, the lack of connectivity, also the question that, for example, it is so damaging environmentally, which is what, of course, I'm experiencing in Lichfield and up and down the line between Birmingham and London. Instead of using existing transport corridors, as it will do, actually, as it goes into the north of the country on phase 2, between Birmingham and London, it crashes through unspoiled countryside, and unnecessarily, actually, because the original plan was that it would use an existing transport corridor like the M40 or the M1. It would go into St Pancras, and indeed it would go into Birmingham New Street with the creation of 2 platforms. Who changed it? Lord Adonis, all those years ago. And to my surprise, actually, David Cameron stuck to the original scheme.
All of those objections have been overruled by the government, which is keen to do all of this because, I mean, the number one thinking behind this, presumably behind the scenes, is that after Brexit, we need as a country to demonstrate almost to ourselves, actually, that we're capable of doing these big projects. In the face of that, you were never going to get your way.
Well, it seems to be the case. I mean, I certainly believe that we need 2 extra lines, whether they're HS2 or upgrading the West Coast Main Line with 2 extra lines. We certainly need it because of capacity problems on the West Coast Main Line. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, I think people in years to come will look back on this project and just say they could have done it so much better. It's a little bit like my old Hornby 00 train, which I used to have in my bedroom as a kid. And it never went actually anywhere because it didn't connect with other railway lines. Of course, it was a toy. And I'm not saying HS2 is a toy, but it could have been done so much better. And, you know, it destroys in the process of everything over 100 ancient woodlands. These are woodlands which are over 400 years old.
Yeah, but on that, the point is made by campaigners that actually big road projects destroy woodlands as well. And in fact, the amount of woodland destroyed is a tiny, tiny proportion of the ancient woodland we have in that country.
As a member of the Woodland Trust, I can tell you I don't agree with that at all.
But no,
it is just...
It destroys a tiny, tiny amount.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to get into an argument with you over woodlands. What I am getting into an argument with you about is this is costing £106 billion. It could have been done cheaper if we'd used existing transport corridors because it would have been on the surface.
But on the existing transport corridors, another serious point that backers of the scheme, the existing scheme, the scheme we're going to say, is you can't use existing corridors. The whole point is you free up those corridors now for other things to happen. So
but you go alongside.
Endless work on those corridors.
No, they don't say that, or if they do say that, they're wrong, because you go alongside the existing transport corridor. That's the point. You go alongside the M40 or the West Coast Main Line.
So those lines could have continued to work, is your
Yes,
your
absolutely, and that is precisely what is happening in Phase 2. So, look, before I became an MP, I was an engineer. All right, I was building radio stations, but I had an engineering brain. Unfortunately, a lot of the people, including Andy Street, who is a good friend of mine, these are people who believe in the philosophy of it. I agree with the philosophy of HS2, but because it's affected Lichfield so badly, I've made the point of looking at it in detail, and I see how flawed the actual detail is. But you are going to have
to say to your constituents now, and other Conservative MPs who have opposed the scheme are going to have to say to their constituents, we have lost, it is going to go ahead and we still support the government. You are going to have to do that, aren't you?
Well, I'm certainly going to support the government. I mean, Boris Johnson is a friend of mine, and he told me only a few weeks ago, how tough this decision was going to be before he'd finally made up his mind. So, there's no question I'm not going to support the government, but if there is any legislation, and there may be, because of changes to the route, I'm certainly not going to be voting for it.
Really? You'll still, at this stage, and you think a significant number of your colleagues would still vote against?
Oh, I wouldn't. I used to be a government whip. I'm no longer a government whip. They're the ones to ask, well, not that they'll tell you, about how many might rebel. But I, for one, cannot support this, and my constituents would quite rightly say, having argued so long and hard about why HS2 is so flawed in its design, for me to say, right, I'm now going to vote for it would be a nonsense.
All right, Michael Fabricant, let's turn